So I'm here with
John.
John.
Yeah.
I'm Rob, and we were just talking about whether or not John believes in God. And so you said you're not sure, you do or don't believe in God?
Yeah, I'm not officially following any religion, and it's not that I don't believe in God or do believe in God. It's kind of, I don't know, I don't really know how I feel about it, I guess,
Okay.
in a way.
So are you agnostic then? You're sort of undecided?
Yeah, I guess you could call me agnostic for the most part. Yeah.
Okay. So tell me about why you're unsure about whether God exists or not.
I don't know, I just wasn't raised under going to church or anything like that, so I haven't really been out, experienced what other people believe and all that, and I don't know, I just kind of seeing like everyone argue about it for the most part, I guess, so you get that conflict, and it's kind of like you're not sure if you want to be a part of that. And I mean, I know there's they do a lot of great things, churches and things like that, and I respect everybody's beliefs and all that. You can do what you want.
So let's take church and religions and all the different arguments and stuff. Let's take that out of the equation completely. Do you think that there's objective evidence for the existence of God that's separate from religion, separate from a purveyor of God, that's just objective?
I think you could argue either way. I don't really see any evidence. I mean, yeah, there's things that happen you can't really explain and stuff like that, and you could argue for that. I don't know. You could say that about science too. Science, we made that up, so you can't. We believe that's true, but you could also argue that it's not true, and science is all made up just to explain things. And you could go either way with each one, I think, religion and science. So I don't know if there's evidence really to believe in that, but I mean, there could be.
Are you interested in hearing a couple pieces of evidence for the existence of God?
Go for it.
Okay, now this is non-subjective, it's not the Bible, it's not a circular argument or anything like that. Here it says in the Bible, God exists, so he must exist, right? Completely objective, meaning it's not my personal experience, it's just observing objective evidence.
Okay.
Have you ever thought about why we exist?
Yeah, all the time.
Why there's a world, how everything came together?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard of the Big Bang Theory?
Yes.
Okay, so 13.7 billion years ago, there was a Big Bang.
Mm-hmm.
And from the Big Bang Theory, we know that before the Big Bang, there was nothing in this dimension.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no matter or energy, there was no time, and there was no space. There was literally nothing in this dimension. And then 13.7 billion years ago, bam, there's this Big Bang, and all of a sudden everything exists. So if you and I hear a Big Bang on the other side of this building and you ask me, hey Rob, what caused that? And I say, nothing caused that. Would you be able to accept that line of thinking that nothing caused an explosion?
Probably not, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if before the Big Bang, if the evidence for the Big Bang is true and there was nothing before the Big Bang, then what options does that leave? It leaves, from my perspective, at least two options. In the beginning, nothing created the universe, or in the beginning, something outside of this dimension, in another dimension, created this universe. Does that make sense? Do you have a thought on why you think this universe came into existence?
Yeah, I don't think anyone. I mean, if you believe in God and stuff like that, that would be your reason. But I don't know if everyone really can explain why before, and I don't know if there's anything really to do that. I mean, I guess if you believed in God, you could say that. But it's also how did God come to existence and how all that, I guess you could go both ways. And I understand where you're coming from. I think about that too. I'm like, how does that start? How did the Big Bang, where did that really condense, whatever they had argued, where did that come from and all that? I don't know. I really don't know how to explain it. So.
Well, here's the line of thinking. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's the first verse of the Bible. So everything that has a beginning must have a cause. We use that, if you hear a Big Bang on the other side of this building and you say, what caused that? And I say, nothing. That's not a logical line of thinking. Yeah. Everything that has a beginning must have a cause. The universe has a beginning. Therefore, the universe has a cause, which must be something outside of this dimension, because this dimension didn't exist. Have you ever thought about moral absolutes?
Can you give an example?
Do you believe in moral absolutes, that there's a few things, maybe not many, but at least a few things that are absolutely wrong?
Absolutely wrong, yeah.
Meaning by absolute, I mean, it doesn't matter whether anyone believes in it or doesn't believe in it, it's still wrong. the entire United States might believe that it's okay, but it's still wrong, absolutely, independent from our minds. For example, the Holocaust, absolutely wrong. The rape and torture of an innocent 7-year-old girl, absolutely wrong. Do you believe in that kind of moral absolute?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So think about a worldview with no God. If there's no God, there's no mind prior to the human mind to create and define what's right and wrong, which means that human minds create and define what's right and wrong, which basically means everything becomes relative, including morality.
Yeah.
Because if it's human minds, you have your version of what's right and wrong, I have my version, the Nazis have their version, the white South Africans have their version. You know, the United States society had their version that blacks were three-fifths the value of white people not too long ago.
Yeah.
So, and who's right and who's wrong? But if we claim that our observation of human life is that there are moral absolutes, would you think that points to a moral lawgiver, a mind prior to the human mind that creates and defines moral absolutes?
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I mean, you could, yeah. And I don't know, all that stuff's really, relative to think about. And it's
Have you ever
kind of
thought
weird.
about that before?
Not that exactly, but I think about stuff like that all the time where you're like, oh, how did this come to be like this, and why do we do this, and things like that. And
Well-
yeah, I've never heard it that way before, and I think that's a good point.
So
but-
think about moral absolutes as, if there is no God, the logical ramifications of the atheistic worldview is that the Holocaust wasn't absolutely evil, it was just a bad idea. And the opposite view of the Holocaust, both views are equally valid because there's no objective basis for morality. So a wife is cheated on by her husband. She comes home, finds her husband laying in a bed with another woman and says, "You should not have done that to me." She's morally outraged. Does she have a right to say, "You should not have cheated on me. You should not have done that to me"?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. When we use words like should or ought, "You should not have stolen my backpack," or "You ought not have done that," we're appealing to a standard, a moral value of justice that exists separate from our minds and saying, this value of justice is independent, therefore you should not, you ought not have done that. So that's another piece of evidence for God's existence, or our observation of moral absolutes. That's why when you go to Schindler's List, the movie, and you walk out, you don't walk out singing tra-la-la, the Nazis murdered a few Jews. You reel back with moral indignation over what happened because your conscience bears witness with you that what happened was really evil. And I think that's a clear piece of evidence that there's a mind prior to the human mind, a moral lawgiver that gives us this moral compass, this conscience that informs us what's good and what's evil. So that's two pieces of evidence for God's existence. Have you ever thought about life coming from non-life?
Yeah.
So if there is no God, human life and all types of life, animal life, plant life, human life, comes from inanimate matter. So without a God, you've reduced our value to material. We don't have a soul, we don't have a spirit. We're just material, which means that you and I are no more valuable than a pebble on the ground, or no more valuable than a leaf that falls off a tree, because the atheistic worldview has reduced our value down to nothing more than material. We're just cosmic accidents, right? Our birth was an accident, our death was an accident, and everything that falls between our life is just another accident. So I think if our human observation is that we really do view others as valuable, and we really do have an innate sense that I have value, I think that clearly points that you're created in the image of God, you're created for a purpose, and that's built in intrinsically in you. And that if there is no God, life comes from inanimate matter. Living, breathing organisms come from inanimate matter. But all of our human observation shows us differently, that human life comes from human life, animal life comes from animal life, plant life comes from plant life. We have no observation that shows us that life comes from inanimate matter. Therefore, I believe it's more reasonable to say, in the beginning, God created living beings, a living being created living beings, than in the beginning, hydrogen created living, breathing beings and organisms.